Hello, and welcome to the Adorkable Anarchist World, Episode 2. That's right, I actually made it around to doing Episode 2. And bad news, I don't really have a webcam this week. Gonna get that taken care of sometime either today or tomorrow, and hopefully I'll have it by next week. And unfortunately, Privacy Shield did not reach its said goal on Kickstarter, so there goes my one chance at reaching a actual sponsor. But before I move on, I just want to say real quickly, I just want to say this because, like, leading up to these last few months before actually starting the show, it's been a major pain. Like, I've tried starting this show quite a few times actually, and I just want to say thank you to Mike Shanklin, Trip Pugh, Robert Westman, Matthew Dalton from the network here, from the Journalistic Revolution, LMR. But I also want to say thank you to Aaron Nelsons and Will Brown from the Common Ground movement, because they also really helped me out with this too, with helping getting this show off the ground. So I just want to say thanks to you all, and I hope you guys have a great future in all this activism. Okay, and also in a few weeks I will be starting a new business that hopefully we could start getting some money in here to try and fund this program more. It will be known as Agorist Teas. I've started growing organic tea here at my home, and I'm going to start selling it here online. And we'll see if that can become a good, stable way to fund this show. Anyways, to the subjects of today. Now, before I go on to talk about culture and how it enslaves us all, I actually want to go back and talk about the subject from last week, because quite a few people I know were a little bit confused with what I was talking about and everything. Two friends in particular had no clue what this whole debate was. One of them was a libertarian, but isn't so much a libertarian as a libertarian, and I don't know if you just saw me do that, but well, you obviously didn't, because I don't know my camera, but libertarian in quotations, like, well, we still need the government, we still need a federalist system. Yeah, you're a classical liberal, you're not a libertarian. She's probably going to get mad at me when she hears this, but but anyways, to move on to this subject. Now, and one key criticism I got was calling for anarchists to unite made no sense, because you're calling for individualists to come together in a group. And I want to debunk this right now, because if you read Le Bon's The Crowd, and I haven't finished it yet, so I'm not going to act like I'm an expert through and through with this novel, because I'm not. In The Crowd, he talks about how there are certain things that a crowd can accomplish that, like, the individual just can't. And you can't really deny some of this. So here's the question I pose. If we were to come together to oppose statism, nationalism, to oppose what you would consider the normal mainstream of everything, at that point, is it really considered a form of collectivism as much of it is as it is individuals coming together to oppose, in other words, a form of fascism? I mean, in a way, collectivism needs nationalism and culture to thrive. If we were to unify against it, it would be in great trouble. And to continue on the subject of the libertarian left and the new libertarian debate, I wish I had a webcam today, because I found my friend sent me this chart that really, like, showed me, like, how much of a chance we could really have at making a change if we were just to set aside our differences and realize we share a common goal. This chart basically showed the three political parties, the Democrats, the Republicans, and the Libertarian Party, and the Libertarian left, all in the paradigm with their numbers. And there's a lot of people on the Libertarian left side. If we were to find a way to unite, like, it makes more sense for libertarians to unite than it would be to unite with those who are obviously going to betray you and stab you in the back later. I mean, I truly don't understand this debate and why there's such a divide between the two. I mean, if anything, this is what the state wants. This is what they This is what they would want to divide their biggest enemy. So I guess to continue with this subject shortly, I'm going to start off by describing both sides of this debate. On the libertarian left side, you have more of the anarcho-communists, the anarcho-syndicalists, the social anarchists, the primitivists, etc., who believe in communal ownership of property, no money, and are, for the most part, totally opposed to capitalism. On the other side, you have the more new libertarians, anarcho-capitalists, anarcho-objectivists, anarcho-liberals, or whatever the hell you want to call yourself, because I still have yet to find a consistent term besides anarcho-capitalist. In the middle, you sort of have mutualism and agorism, but I'll get to that in a second. The more new libertarians, they view private ownership as property as a good thing. And for money and currencies, they believe in free banking. Now, and one key criticism from the libertarian left is that when you have money in a system, eventually a small group of people will get a hold of all of that money, making them the new hierarchical system above the people. However, if you have multiple currencies, multiple competing currencies in the marketplace, it's going to be it would be very hard, if not impossible, to actually get as far up as many of these elitists do today. Another thing with the new libertarians is they view capitalism as a good force in the universe, that the market is the best arbitrator for judging what works and doesn't work within a society. Now then, at the end of the day, when you really look close at both these ideologies, there's one thing that one can realize. We share the same goal, but we have different desires. We share the same goal of that of anarchy, but when it comes to what we hope to see in society, we have different ideas for that. The more anarcho-communist people, they want to form something more communal, something that is radically different from our current system. And the new libertarians want to form something that, while I won't even lie, does keep some things from our current system, only small things, not anything too major, in my opinion. For instance, central currencies and all sorts of things that I can go on forever on why our current system isn't capitalism at all. There's certain things that I have to admit would make sense to keep. And of course, in the middle, as I said before, you have agorism and mutualism, which are kind of as I said in my last video, the bastard children of both these ideologies. And no, neither of the ideologies really want to take full responsibility for either of them. But these two ideologies are kind of the common ground between the two, where you can find somewhat of I don't know how else to explain this. Alright, whatever, just forget I said that. But one thing that I found strange while researching this is so many people from the libertarian left, they claim this to libertarianism and anarchism as a whole to be only from the left, something that only exists from the left. And when you bring up that the left-right paradigm is a false dichotomy, well, for many of them anyways, will say that you're talking like a bourgeoisie. Reminds me of my days when I used to be a communist. And here's one thing about that never made sense. As anarchists, we are freeing ourselves from the system. And one big part of the system is this left-right paradigm. As anarchists, I thought we were supposed to be beyond this, that we were better than this, that we wanted to prove that we don't need this false paradigm to show us where we stand in our lives. I don't understand how any anarchist could only look at this as something from the left. Because really it's not. I mean, one thing that kind of brought a lot of controversy when I brought it up was, in my opinion, this whole debate today of the left anarchists versus the right anarchists, however you want to look at it. I brought up that I thought it was just an extension of the individualist collectivist debate. And immediately many left anarchists swarmed on me, pointing out how even many of the anarchist individualists were socialist. And while this is true, you also had many mutualists. There was still somewhat of a free market thing weaved into it. Like small markets. I don't know how else to explain it. I mean, heck, I even look back at my days when I was a social anarchist, and I was probably more mutualist than I realized. Like, there was still a lot that I wanted the workers to have a control of. But at the same time, I still wanted businesses to exist to a certain point, and I wanted there to still be individual liberty. But I think I was a lot less of a social anarchist and more of a mutualist. All right. So now on to the subject of culture. And as Terence McKenna once said, culture is the enemy. This is true because culture just enslaves us as human beings. It doesn't teach us to create, it teaches us to follow. It doesn't teach us to lead, it teaches us to tail. It doesn't teach to create, and that is the biggest problem with culture. And as I said before, culture and nationalism in a way are one and one, because think about it. Since you were young, from everything you have seen in culture, you've seen the American flag be paraded around throughout the culture. Hell, yesterday was Flag Day, and I'm sure you saw the American flag draped everywhere. But then again, I already see that every day on the way to work by the millions of car dealerships I pass on the way to work. Culture is one of the three things that I think is preventing man from evolving, in a sense. Those three things being culture, ethnicity, and nationalism. And when I say ethnicity, I mean us looking at ethnic groups instead of looking at it as, I'm a human being, you're a human being. Unfortunately, we still have this idea of division, because in a way, ethnicity is what leads to borders, and borders creates nationalism. And the only way to sustain nationalism is through culture and getting it ingrained in everyone's mind. So, what is the solution to simply culture? Ethnicity and nationalism I will talk about on a separate occasion. But what is our solution? How can we solve this culture problem? In a way, I think we're already kind of solving the problem. I think what we need is a countercultural revolution, one that tries to remove nationalism from culture and inspires the individual more. This isn't hard to do. It's simply not promoting the flag, not promoting the farm. Promote the human race instead. Promote everyone as your equals, as many would say. Culture is simply slavery, and there is no way around it. And there is no one more hopelessly enslaved than that who follows. And as for the subject of ethnicity, this one, I will talk about this right now. I will, because these three subjects, they're kind of intertwined. They really are. And how to deal with ethnicity, like this one truly is the hardest one, because people like to take pride in their ethnic backgrounds. They like to think that they are part of some kind of great family that is better than every other human on the world, but when you really boil down to it, that's not the case at all. At the end of the day, we're all human beings living on this earth. We're all living for the sake of one another peacefully, and we all help each other out peacefully. The differences that we find between one another normally aren't ethnic or national. It's normally just a small group of people finding that they have a problem with another small group of people. Here's the question I pose to anyone who is truly ingrained in nationalism, culture, or ethnicity. If you were walking down the road one day with a group of people, and there was another group of people walking the opposite direction towards you, and somewhere in the middle, there are two men fighting, pushing at each other. You know that they're about to fight. But when you and the other group of people get close to these two men arguing, they both look at different groups and say, you, come fight for me right now because I'm from the same neighborhood you live in. Would you go and start a brawl against people you don't even know for the sake of one person who you barely even know? Because in a sense, that's all that war has ever been. is a small elite of people having a argument or dispute with another small elite of people, and then sending people from their so-called neck of the woods who supposedly they represent or know, or however you would like to say it, to go fight people from the other place. And that just makes no sense, because it's truly insanity. Man, just had to get that off my chest. Alright, but culture, nationalism, and ethnicity are truly the downfalls of man, and until we can look past these childish ideals, I don't think humankind can ever evolve. But at the same time, in a sense, I see it happening daily. At the former police officer I know at work, who he wouldn't call himself an anarchist, but if you were to talk to him, he did believe that we should have like minimal government, at least down to the local level. He understood that there were much corruption in the police force. Like, he's a very open-minded man. And even a good friend of mine who I work with, who he got me the job. We were talking the other day, and he even said, like, honestly, I think we should try out anarchism. And I tried, and he didn't really understand the whole capitalist sentiment of it, but he still thought, like, we should at least let human beings do what they want to do, so as long as they don't hurt another person. And I know that sounds crazy and chaotic, but it's simple. And unfortunately, people today, through cultural division, have come to think that if something is simple, then it can't work. When in reality, it's the opposite. If something is simple, it's easier to work because it's easier to share a simple ideal with more people. Alright, that's all I got on culture, nationalism, and ethnicity. That was just something that I've been building up for a long time. And now I want to try and talk about something that I simply have coined as romantic anarchism. And I've been on a few shows before talking about this. I've been on Adam versus the Man, discussed it with him. First time I coined it, I talked with Derek Bros about it back when he was hosting ABTM, and he kind of looked at me as if I was nuts. But since then, I have grown to learn more. And I don't know if any of you have read Ayn Rand's Romantic Manifesto, but I highly recommend it if you are into the arts or into have any sort of artistic ties as I do. I'm very much so an artistic person, and it always made sense to me that capitalism simply works better for the artist because it helps him provide with what he needs to create art. Because this is something that I have found when debating communists. They don't know how communism would be good for the artist. I still remember talking with one man, and the best rebuttal he could come up with why capitalism was terrible for art was that, well, in a communist system, we'd be able to appreciate it better. Now, that doesn't mean anything. Just because you live in a capitalist system doesn't mean you can appreciate the beauty of art the same way. That makes no sense. If anything, I would think in a communist system there would be less appreciation of the art because individualism and artistic things are discouraged, generally. Everything is wanted to keep equal and fair, and because of that, less artists find the inspiration they need. So Romanticism is defined as a movement of art and literature that originated in the 18th century, emphasizing inspiration, subjectivity, and primacy of the individual. That's a typo, I think. And when I read this, it made me wonder why so many romantics were nationalists. Because economics, in a sense, is very subjective. whether you like it or not, even if you look at it as an objective way like I do. And individualism is just so anarchic. So why would you want to try and attach yourself to something of nationalism? Because that totally contradicts the ideas of individualism. And when I looked more into the definition, there's also another way of looking at it, where a state or quality of being romantic, as if a romantic pipe dream or a fantasy. And I think that's how so many people have come to look at romanticism today, and I think that's very sad. Because anarchism is not a great romantic fantasy. In a sense, I would argue it is the great romantic fantasy soon to become a reality. It's soon to become something greater. And I think in a truly anarchistic world, romantic arts would thrive. The romantic arts would grow even more. Because the means of exchange would be better. Due to a truly free market, more artists would be able to get their stuff out. Prices would be lower to afford certain things necessary to make the art that we see inside of our heads. Heck, I even think in a more anarchistic world, street artists could find more better work and better ways to use their art. Confession right now, I once was a street artist, but nothing I ever made really made it anywhere. It's like it always got tagged over pretty quickly. But if you look at it right now, you can't make a modify to a building. If I owned a business and I said, hey, I would like this big wall on the side of my business that's just blank, I would love to have a good artist come in here to modify this wall, make it look more appealing, make it look beautiful and dashing to attract more customers. Well, you can't do that right now without getting permission from the state, to get permits from locally and, in some cases, federally. And that's very disappointing because it shuts out what could be a great market for people who truly have a passion for what they do. If anything, I hope that many will understand this idea of romantic anarchism that I am currently coming to terms with, currently trying to grow a little bit more. I hope maybe in the future I can have Derek Bros on here and maybe we could discuss this again, because I also have grown another ideology that I discussed with him that I hope to discuss next week, let that be a little tease, of something I have coined as Taoist atheism. Spiritual connections to the universe without a god. My friend calls it a total paradox, but I beg to differ. I'll explain that for another day. Well, I'm just about reaching the end of my time, so I just want to say, as I said before, I'm trying to think of a way to end this without sounding cliche. Oh man, well, I will just say this again that I said in the beginning. Keep an eye out for Agorist tea. As soon as I get those plants flourishing and I have a good supply ready, I will start selling that tea for Bitcoin, silver, gold, whatever the hell you want to trade for it. And I will give you the fair amount necessary. And for some words to close it, I'm going to take these words from another anchor that I know I just mentioned a few minutes ago, and I hope he'll sometime come on here to discuss that. I'm Mitchell Wiechek, and if you're listening to this, you are the resistance.